So I had learned this technique when I was in grade school because I wasn't a big fighter. I avoided fights. That was kind of what I was taught as a child. But there were times that like bullies at school would there was one in particular, and somebody taught me this technique where if you want to bring somebody down is you take your thumbs against the inside of their wrist and you pinch down on that. And if you can get both of them, that's even better. And I know I used it as a kid for the one bully I had, but there was this time when I was older. And again, like I said, I was not big on fights. I didn't have big barroom brawls or anything, but I was working at a school as their maintenance person, a janitor, I guess you still call it. And I was kind of the boss of a crew of people about my same age. I was, gosh, I gotta think, I was in college, so I was probably about 19 or 18, and had a crew of people. Some people I knew and some I didn't. And there was just one guy in the crew that didn't want to do any work. And a little bit of a story there, but you had to understand that the guy who was my boss never came upstairs. We had a 3-story school. He wouldn't go beyond the first floor because he was an older gentleman. I think he was in his 70s at the
Probably
time.
couldn't walk up the
He
stairs.
couldn't. So he rarely, every once in a while, he would come up. But so some of the guys got this idea that they didn't have to work if he isn't going to show up. And I had to finally one time kind of lay down the law and I guess let him know I was boss. But this one that wouldn't do anything got really upset when I really tried to get him to do his job. And he kind of came at me, and I was able to grab his wrist and do this technique and bring him down across the desk. And I said, "You're going to work now, and we're going to be working for the next couple of months here, right?" And he wouldn't say, if he didn't say right, he wasn't getting up. And I got him to do his job.
That's an interesting story in light of this whole idea of communicating. If you had had these techniques and skills
That's
about
true.
how to
That's
talk
true.
to people, I thought you were going to play up the childhood bully story that there was a kid who was always beating you up and picking on you.
Well, he wasn't really beating me up, but he would just make fun of me, and he would follow me home. And in retrospect to it, it was one of those things where he wasn't a tough guy at all. In fact, when I turned on him and finally did something about it, he was a wimp and went down pretty easily. And I didn't have to, I never punched him or anything like that. I just held him down to the ground and said, "You leave me alone or I'm going to do this even more," you know. But yeah, you're right. It would be nice to have had these communication skills back then, but unfortunately we didn't.
So hello,
I'm Don
and I'm Gina, and
with Focused Healthy Family.
a little slow today. This is podcast number 60. Today we're talking about alternatives to punishment. But before we get into it, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor is Q Sciences. I've been a representative for Q Sciences for over a year. I found this company through a friend and did some research and reading about these products. And I really liked what I found when I learned about them. The research and time that they've put into the quality of these products to be better absorbed into the body. Things like the vitamin D spray. Our youngest was on a capsule vitamin D, and yet vitamin D levels remained the same with follow-up checkups. And with the spray, it increased.
Pretty strong.
Almost double.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking her levels were maybe 20. And I want to say they went up to 47 or something around that range. And the sleep spray is another great one. It's got melatonin, 5-HTP, and I believe another herbal supplement in there. And because it's a spray, you spray it on your tongue, it gets absorbed more quickly into your body to be more effective to help you in the moment. we're using the B12 spray. We've used the vitamin C spray. They have a Q Max product, which is a multivitamin.
And they also have the CBD, different, a variety of different,
It's full spectrum
full
hemp
spectrum, yes.
oils. They even have a THC free version. It comes in different flavors. There is a mushroom
oh yeah,
armor. It's called Q Armor. It's a powder, and I get the chai flavor. Put it in my chai tea for a double chai drink.
so instead of, as they say, flushing your supplements down, well, the toilet or the drain, you want to get something like this that's fully absorbed. It's like flushing money down the toilet too, if you're not using a supplement that absorbs well and does well for your body. So that's what Q Science is really about. It's a good, well absorbed, high nutrient product.
They have multiple products. They have child specific products. They now also have some facial cream products. I've been using a night cream to minimize the effects of sunlight and stress and aging on my skin. And they have a hemp lotion. That's also a wonderful product that we've tried. So check us out, learn more. You can find the link at our website,
www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can also go to focusedhealthyfamily.com/Q Sciences, the letter Q and Sciences.
with an S at the end.
With the S at the end, yes. And we're back.
Talking about alternatives to punishment. The first thing we're going to get into is the situation that we discussed in last week's podcast, and we'll review that now. So you are called by your child's school.
Because they were fighting. Imagine that. That's why we were talking.
So you pick your child up from school because of this, and your child gets in the car. And who starts the conversation? Do you say something to them, or does your child say something?
Well, the other thing is, do you say something even before you get out of the principal's office or going down the hall? Do you embarrass your child by, screaming at them, talking to them, or, trying to punish them in front of their friends or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, this could be a whole different realm of aspects of this, because do you have to meet in the principal's office to discuss it? Did they call you on the phone? How are they contacting you? And maybe it's slightly different than kid fighting. They've gotten in trouble in some other way, or they've skipped school, or in some way where you typically
being called in
would want, punishment would be involved.
Mm-hmm.
They've done something wrong. So,
well, yeah, and what's interesting, like grounding, are you the type of parent that you're grounded for the rest of your life, or some impossible punishment, that will never
put that under there,
that will never hold up in court?
Well, threats that you don't follow through on. What's the word for that?
Threats you don't follow up on. I can't think of it either, but it's,
and where does that get you in the law?
Frivolous punishments that that then prove, well, one, they don't even serve the purpose that you're trying to do, because then you become unbelievable for your punishment. They don't hold any merit, because you're not going to go the rest of their life being punished. Or
well, and does the punishment make any sense? You were fighting in school, so therefore I'm taking your phone. That's their means of communicating. You were fighting in school, therefore you can't have screen time. I mean, when you think about it, is there any kind of connection there? And what is going to be the long-term outcome of this? If I do something wrong, someone bigger and older with more power than me takes away things that are important to me. So what kind of message is that? So, how might you respond in this scenario? You might say something like, you're now grounded for a month, or I can't believe you've gotten into another fight. What is wrong with you? You're always getting in trouble.
Oh, yeah. Those power words of always and never.
Yes, you're always getting into a fight. What's wrong with you? Like,
Oh my.
throwing that at your kid, it's implying,
Kind of like a psychological issue or something,
well, telling them that they're wrong, that it is their problem, and then the predicting the future. If you keep getting in fights, you're going to get kicked out of school, then you won't get into college, you're never get a good job, you're going to wind up working at McDonald's for the rest of your life, which
if you like hamburgers, it might not be bad.
Yeah, and there are people who work there.
Yes, they become managers, that become.
But these are the things that we often say. You won't you won't even be able to hold a job at McDonald's.
You're going to be a loser. I mean, and we talked a lot before about labels and how you can label somebody without necessarily saying it.
Right.
But when you give them a statement like that you're never going to get this and never. In their mind, they say, yeah, I'm a loser.
So why bother trying?
Yeah.
They tell me I can't do anything right. Well, why should I try to do anything right? I might as well be really good about being a troublemaker.
Well, that's because they can take it two different directions. They can beat themselves up about it. I'm no good. I'm a loser. I'm this or that. Or they can go the other direction and say, well, next time I'm not going to get caught. Or the next time, whatever, so they kind of, vent out, or they become, the resentment builds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so they, I think that's where we get to that point. And this might be a little off, but, I remember when our kids were 2 and they were talking about the terrible twos, and everybody would say, just wait till they're teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what a lot of these kind of punishments can cause, the resentment that by the time they get to be teens or even adults, there's so much resentment built up that, that's when they rebel. That's when they are argumentative or they're resistant or all of that.
You haven't established a good communication with them for them to be able to come to you. Another way you could respond to your child is the berating of questions. Are you okay? What happened? Who started it? What were you doing? Did you do something first? What was going on? What was the teacher doing?
Well, and then, you could go for the other side. Well, you must have done something to make them do that, or in other words, somehow justifying the other side of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, does your kid start to talk, and do you jump in, or do you give them an opportunity to finish? So if you've had a conversation like this, how did it go? What did it lead to? Did it make the problem actually better or worse? So what we've found in working with parents and from our own experience is, these, like you mentioned, Don, these typical responses lead to the parent feeling angry and hopeless, and the child feeling resentful, building up anger, feeling like a failure, having low self-esteem, lack of confidence. And it can affect how they do in school and in the long term in their life and their relationships with other people. And like you said, inadvertently labeling them in ways. When you get labeled, you live up to that label. It's sort of a
self-fulfilling kind of prophecy.
Right.
Kind of thing, yeah. Well, well, I had a thought and it went right out of there. I'll come back to it, I guess.
So we're looking at some validating responses. You could describe the situation. This is one of my favorite. When you don't know what to do, whether you walk in and your kids are fighting or something's happened, you describe the situation. So I was in a meeting at work when the principal called to tell me you were fighting. And then you can describe what you feel. It's frustrating when I have to leave work. And then being quiet and letting your child speak. So in those statements, they were I statements. I was in a meeting when the principal called me to tell me you were fighting. So that's facts. That's what happened. That's the situation. And then what you feel. It's frustrating when I have to leave work. These are I statements. When we say you, I can't believe you did that. it's pointing the finger at
Yeah,
the
I was
other
gonna say,
person, and then it sets them up for just being defensive.
that finger almost comes out automatically.
And then letting the child talk, giving them that opportunity. And when they do talk, remember, we need to acknowledge feelings. So helping them identify the feeling, helping to label it, and just letting them know you're there to listen. And again, it's as simple as being quiet, responding with a simple one word.
Mhm.
And then, at the end of this, kind of stating your expectations. So that in this situation, it might be when you have a problem with someone, I expect you to first try talking and then go to an adult if you can't resolve it with words. So that's the expectation that you're setting up there.
Well, and the other part of that is possibly allowing the child to come up with new expectations of how to handle that situation.
We'll do another podcast all on problem solving, but helping to brainstorm with them. So this is what happened. Let's back up. What could you have done differently? What could we do differently next time? And giving them that opportunity to come up with those ideas, because if it's their idea, they're going to be far more empowered to make that change and do things differently the next time. So some other thoughts on this, since you maybe don't have a kid who's fighting at school, but if you have more than one child, you might find them fighting. And how do you handle that? And again, going back to the describing what you see, you walk into a room and, I see one of you on top of the other, and I hear crying and yelling, and I see you both holding onto a toy. I'm concerned about your safety right now, right? And we have to really step back and ask ourselves, what's the real danger here? Is someone in serious danger? So that we don't intervene too quickly, we allow them to be able to separate themselves. Obviously, if there's something that looks like serious danger, you do need to intervene.
I know the thing I was thinking, it kind of came back to me, but it was when you talked about shutting up and listening, is doing true, real listening, not sitting in your mind trying to figure out what's the next thing you're going to say or how you're going to solve it or what you're going to do, is be able to turn that off to allow your child to really talk to you. And even, we kind of, and then we won't go into it too deeply, but the idea of mirroring is, kind of listening to them and kind of saying back some of the things that they're saying so they know that you're really getting it.
So what you're talking about, Don, is mirroring, so that when you say something, I'm going to let you know that I heard what you're saying and I'm going to give it back to you. And you often don't want to do this word for word, because
especially with the teenager,
why are you mimicking me or mocking me, or
but more in a general sense, okay, so
I hear you saying.
Well, even that sounds a little, I think might be a little bit, I don't know,
depending on the situation.
You have to know your child is to know how to put the right words out there, but to come just to be able to kind of
say, what I'm hearing is this, do I have it right, or am I missing something, and
make sure you get it all, give them time to be able to get it all out before you even try to say anything else.
And remember, to accept the feelings. If your child's upset, they're maybe won't say it so nicely, but that's okay. Let them feel that anger. Give them that space to do that. You can state your expectations with how we talk to each other, yet you can also give them a little leeway.
Well, I think too, could be important if you are very angry as the parent to be able to say, look, let's take a few minutes of just quiet, because I'm angry and I want to calm myself down. So let's talk about it when we get home, or let's give ourselves 10 minutes of just quiet, because I know I'm angry and I'm sensing that you might be angry too. So it gives us then we can talk on a more level basis.
That you bring up a good point, Don, and that's a great example of showing your child, listen, I really want to talk about this with you. I got a lot on my mind and I don't feel like I can listen very well right now. I'd love to have this conversation in an hour, and name a time and follow through.
Well, you might have to go back to work, and you might, drop them off. And what I thought there would be, if I don't know if the child journals, but say, hey, why don't you write your feelings down for me? And then let's talk about them. And maybe you as a parent do the same thing, at least write down some major stuff of it. You don't have to journal it real big, but write down, I'm frustrated at this, using I statements, and then the two of you can come together later and look at each other's statements to kind of get a feel. I think it would help both the child and yourself to understand how the other person handles things and deals with things.
And again, it's an opportunity with an older child to talk about, well, in the moment when we're really angry, this is where we're at, and these are the feelings and the words that we have. And once we're able to calm down from the situation, we can look at it a little more objectively, and the way we talk about it might sound different.
I mean, I know our youngest doesn't like to write, so I would suggest, why don't you record it? Get a recorder out and you can blast it if you want, and say what it goes back to those. I still think of Gray with the Tuesdays, saying it exactly as you feel it. Ray Gray with his Tuesday, where he allows the kids
to talk and give feedback.
In this situation, allow them to say it as they want to say it and what they want to say without getting judgmental about it, so they can get it out and it really express it fully the way they would want to.
Because the real important thing with a situation like this, where your kid's getting into fights, is they need to learn skills to be able to resolve things so it doesn't get to that point.
Yeah.
So if we're stepping in, telling them what they should have done, how they should handle it, that's not empowering them to make a better decision. Yeah. That's just us bossing them around and telling them they're doing everything wrong. So it's important to get them on board. And in order to get there, you've got to feel heard.
When you really want them to be able to feel within themselves, wow, I resolved this. Dad didn't do it. Dad, gave me some thoughts, but I was able to change how I did this, or I was able to amend whatever happened myself. And so they become proud. It kind of goes, we won't talk about it, but in the book we're talking about, they have a whole chapter on praise and making it effective when they praise themselves, or when they, feel good that they amended this situation.
Yeah, that builds true self-confidence when they can see for themselves, okay, I handled this better this time, or I have a new plan for next time, is more powerful than us building them up with words, because then they're seeking that approval from other people. So I'd like to get into a little bit more alternatives to punishment. You might feel like, well, what else can I do? Then they have to learn a lesson. They need to be.
Yes. Yeah.
So, what are some alternatives to punishment? So I went over some of these in this example, but expressing your own feelings strongly without attacking their character. I'm furious that my new saw was left outside to rust in the rain. So you're expressing what you're feeling. And in that moment, it's okay to have some emotion to it. I'm furious, right? You can say, I'm furious that my saw was left out.
Well, and the character part, I think, is an extremely important part of it. Not saying, you idiot, you left my saw out there to rust. It's just stating the fact and leaving their character out of it, because we all make mistakes, and especially a teenager whose brain isn't fully developed. That's easier for them to do, is to make mistakes, because they're still learning.
And, if you screw up, you can back up. You can say, wait a minute, that wasn't fair. I called you a name. It's not nice to call people names. I'm just really angry. I'm going to rephrase how I said that. And you can come back later and, use that as an example. Say, hey, I screwed up. I didn't do a good job at listening. And I don't like the way I talked to you. And this is what I wish I had said. And they might not say anything or just roll their eyes, but letting them know that you're making an effort, they'll see that. And it's a great example for making changes and learning to do things differently. We also talked about stating your expectations. I expect my tools to be returned after you've borrowed them. I expect that if you're having problems with kids at school, that you're going to talk to someone about it. I expect if you're going to be late, you will call me or text me and let me know, make those expectations clear. And whenever possible, spelling out those expectations ahead of time. You can prevent so many things and set yourself up for a much better situation of saying, this is the expectation. If you don't follow through on this, then you won't be able to go next time. Or, but spelling it out ahead of time makes it a clear guideline of what they're supposed to follow and what the consequences might be.
And that'll lead in, when we'll do at some point the problem solving, which is part of that ahead of time setting to figuring out how to make it better.
And then showing them how to make amends. And that's this example I'm kind of using here from the book. And we should share a picture since we are on YouTube now. How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk by Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. So they have this example of, kid leaves the father's tools out in the rain. Could be the mother's tools. And saying to them, what this saw needs is a little steel wool and some elbow grease, right? And you show them how to clean it, how to fix it.
Explain elbow grease nowadays. That was a term used when I was a kid, but I don't know if they know that means putting some force into it. It's really, really working it.
Yeah, I think most people.
I don't know. I just
know that term.
Sounds like something from the 50s to me. But that's...
Oh, I grew up in the 70s. And I'm well aware.
Any grease on that?
Yeah, grease on my elbows.
There's someone, right?
So Don, what are some other alternatives to punishment?
I can't see that far. Remember. Oh, offer choice. Yeah, that's offering choices. You can polish my tools and get them cleaned up, or you can buy me a new set.
Or next time you won't be able to use them.
Well, yeah, or I'm going to have to lock the toolbox, and you're going to have to come to me and ask permission, and I'm going to have to
supervise. And it's not, you don't give them choices as in this is the right choice, this is the wrong choice. You have to give two choices.
They can't be a choice that
it's
they
not
can't handle.
It's not a setup for, are you going to pick the right answer? And taking action, I don't like that you've left my tools out. So I'm going to
talking to me. I thought you were going to say you didn't like my elbow grease. Sorry.
I'm frustrated when you speak over me. I'm frustrated that when I'm talking and you jump in. See, I'm using a you statement. How do I say that without a you statement?
I think because when you did this, I feel this is the way it kind of,
When you talk
over me,
I feel ignored.
So when I talk over you, you feel ignored.
Why, yes, Don, that's what I'm feeling.
Little example
there. I think that was unnecessary. So some other alternatives to punishment, problem solving. And that's a really big
a whole topic on its own.
Skill to be able to sit down and say, okay, I don't like how this happened. What could we do differently? Both of you coming up with ideas. So these are some great tools and skills. This is a wonderful, amazing book. You can listen to it on audio. And we offer workshops based on this. We went through a little training and have a whole program. There's a workbook that comes with it when we do the workshop. And we read a chapter a week. It's not that large of a book. There's 6 basic chapters on the 6 areas. We discuss it. We do practice role-playing, little exercises, and being in a group with other parents to talk about different things. You realize you're not alone.
Yeah, I think
other parents have gone through similar things. And, learning how each other has handled things, and I'm not the only one who's screwed up and
Well, I think
berated my children or
we've seen out of these that we've done before that it doesn't just change your communication. It also helps change behavior. It helps to cut down anxiety. It helps build relationships. And that's the power of this book that goes beyond what just the talk or the communication. I'm hoping we do. I think we'll probably do one somewhere beginning of school, right before,
school
something like that,
starts.
probably the end
And
of
if you
August,
have a
somewhere
group
around
of
there.
people who would, you're in a group of moms, you're in a parent group, anything that you'd like us to bring this workshop to you, let us know. We'd be happy to do that for a specific group of people. And one thing I want to add on there, Don, you talked about using these tools changes, your relationship with your child. But when you can learn to step back and listen, it can change your reaction as well.
Oh, yeah.
It can affect how you view the situation. Because if you're not constantly butting heads and getting into it with your kids, it's going to be less stressful on you, less exhausting for you. And we don't realize, as difficult as it is to just listen, say, I hear you. Wow, I can tell you're upset. You want to tell me more about that? And just listening, it takes some effort. And yet it can be so simple. And it could be all that they need is just to have those feelings heard.
Well, and this goes to and beyond just children. I mean, it works in business. I've used these techniques adapted to an adult, but for business, listening to clients that, that come at you with something, and it goes into our sandwich generation and dealing with an aging parent. They can tend to revert back to being almost like a child in a way, but it also plays into listening to what's going on for them. So it plays in all different areas of life.
Yeah, I want you to share that story, Don, when you were dealing with, was it a client that you were dealing with on the phone? And you used some good listening skills with them. So
Yeah.
set up the scenario for
Well, this was back, gosh, this is way back. In fact, it was probably right.
when you're doing websites.
Yeah. And I
had a website
had a
business.
website business and I had probably about, I think 50 something clients out of it. And I got this phone call one day because we had apparently screwed up, but it was one of those kind of phone calls where you have to almost want to pull the phone away from your ear because he was very irate about it. Just, you did, I can't believe you, just not quite screaming at me, but just at a very raised voice. And when he first stopped talking, I said, wow, you're really upset. I'd really like to know more about this. And it went almost like it was dead on the other end. I like tapped on the phone. I said, are you still there? And he came back and he said, wow, I've never had anybody come back to me that way and talk to me like that. And what I found is it brought down his anxiety or his level,
anger, and
probably by half at least. And then we got to a point where we had a civil conversation. And, I always tried to use I statements, and I also, in those kind of situations, I like to think about kind of humbling myself. Oh, wow, we did that. I didn't realize that. Let me think about what do you think we could do to change that? I put stuff back with on him. What do you think we should do about that? Or how should we handle, what's your thoughts on that? And then if I had a contradicting thought to it, I would just say something like, well, what I see as the problem is, and then I lay it out. And he came away, I think at the end of the conversation, we actually were kind of laughing and joking around a little bit, and we resolved it without an hour-long screaming conversation. And I was just surprised with it. And I try to use that even now with my present clients, and it really does work.
And again, these are great tools that you can learn, and you can utilize them in all of your relationships. And because really, we're raising a human being and we're building a relationship with our children. And there's going to be a relationship there of some sort. And you can take active participation in building that and using good skills to communicate with them, because when you do that, you're teaching them how to communicate. And so they're going to carry these skills over into their life.
Well, another thought that now is coming back to me about it, yeah, when we think about punishment, what our goal out of punishment is trying to teach the kids like independence, or trying to teach them how to handle a situation. And in thinking about it, it really does the opposite.
Mhm.
And so that's where these techniques we've given you, I think, play much stronger in teaching them how to resolve things themselves. So, well, as we have been doing this week, we're doing our what we call situationals, and we're going to play another situation, number 3 now for you. And this is the time to leave the park situational. So listen to this, and then we're going to have some questions for you, and then we'll wrap it up. How would you respond?
We are leaving now, and the next time you want to meet your friend, the answer is no.
There'll be no screen time tonight if you don't get in this car right now.
Why do you have to whine like this? You had 2 hours with your friend. You don't appreciate anything.
Well, I guess we could stay for 15 more minutes, and I can go to the store tomorrow, but I'm not happy about it.
Maybe your child has a meltdown, and you have to pick them up and carry them out while they are kicking and screaming.
Or you let her stay with her friend, and then are resentful that you have to come back later to pick her up.
Do any of these responses sound familiar?
How did the rest of the conversation go?
Did your responses help to resolve the issue, or did things just get worse? Does your child have a hard time transitioning from one activity to another?
I think most of us have had the experience of needing to leave somewhere and our child protest, demanding to stay.
What have you said, and how has your child responded?
Join us next Thursday for our podcast where we will discuss that situational and some possible solutions to that. So join us next Thursday for that.
So that's our podcast for today. We've hoped you enjoyed it. Make sure you give feedback, leave a comment, let us know. If you like what you heard today, share it with someone else. Visit our website at focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's focused with an ED. You can find more information about our workshop and other programs there. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram, gina.focusedhealthyfamily.
And remember, how you speak to your children today shapes their future and yours.